Hi, Anne. Thanks again for being
Hi,
here. Haven't seen you in a
lovely
while
to be
now.
here. I
Yes,
know.
yeah, it's been a
Well, I
while.
haven't seen you physically for quite a while.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, we definitely need to meet up soon. So I just, want to start this conversation with you because we have done some kind of like a beta testing. You have done a beta testing of going through the Vestas Labs workflow and digital product development process, as well as using the platform. So, I would like to have this opportunity to get your feedback and just, have a conversation about fashion, digital product development, traditional product development in general. So to get started, Anne and I we met many years ago when we were both working at Karen Millen. It must have been 15
Oh,
years ago,
yeah, about 15.
about 15 years ago, right? So I was in the merchandising team, product merchandising, and Anne was the design director.
Design,
Were
I was
you?
design man, no, I was design manager at the time.
You were design
So I
manager.
worked,
Yeah.
yeah, so I worked really closely with the creative director and the design team, kind of getting the vision really and funneling it through the business all the way out the other side, really.
Yeah.
So
So.
yeah, so it was a while ago, but really exciting time, really exciting brand.
Mhm.
Was going through a lot of growth. So yeah, it's really exciting to be in brands when they're kind of growing and developing and performing, I guess.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So yeah, that's where we met, and then we sort of through mutual contacts got put in touch with each other again when you were working initially with Vesti to you just reached out for some feedback really, because I'm obviously designer, I'm quite old school, pen and paper, not very digital savvy, I would say, but I was really keen and really interested in finding out about digital development. So it was kind of, you reached out to me at the right time when I was inquisitive enough to kind of try and, I wanted to understand really how it could be integrated into a traditional, I guess, product development, design, product development process. Because as I said, I think previously I'd always been quite not really anti technology or anti CAD, but I think
Mm.
at the time when I first saw CAD or started to see people using like computer aided design in their work, it was still very flat. It was still it was just still very flat, and so I still preferred hand drawing, hand sketching.
Mm.
Just to you got more of a flow and a sense of personality and identity, where I found sort of like flat CAD illustrations a bit soulless, a bit lifeless. And then also, so I kind of, it didn't really interest me that much then, but I guess as the technology has moved on, and how the technology, I don't know, say from gaming, film, animation, and everything has kind of filtered through it, into sort of 3D and stuff. It's just become so much more exciting to me because I suddenly, and also I guess the whole piece about sustainability, because so much waste is created, it takes so much time to go from an initial sketch to the sample stage, and especially with a lot of businesses now not necessarily having a pattern room or the facilities for a designer to work directly with a pattern cutter to sort of create things 3D on a mannequin. A lot of designers now just have to sketch flat. It gets sent out to a factory offshore somewhere, and then the factory, or in the factory, you're kind of putting a lot of onus on them to really understand, to take your idea from a flat 2D thing into a 3D area. So I think it was just where all those cross sections and the intersections started to me, it just become really interesting. And then that's when you introduced me to Vestiabs, really. And so for me, it really was a bit of a game changer because obviously, as I said, I'm not that technical. And in previous businesses, when we have talked about 3D development, there's always been a bit of, I suppose, worry, concern, the cost of investing into developing, 3D design alongside a traditional, design team, the sort of the capital cost to invest in that, the risk of training somebody up and have them leave,
Yeah.
the sort of risk of having, being very much at the, what's the word, it's almost the technician of the 3D system. It's how they work, and you then have to work to get them to translate it, and so all those things kept coming into play all the time whenever I was talking in businesses about bringing, or how we integrate 3D actually into the process. So there was always, I guess, a little bit of hesitance or a little bit of concern about, in different businesses, slightly different concerns, I guess, mainly financial, time, sort of messing up the current critical path, and how would it fit into the timeline? Would it actually increase the time, make it more complicated? So I guess all the things everybody's thinking about when they introduce new process into their practice, into their business. It's all those concerns really. So yeah, that's sort of how we started talking about it in a nutshell, I guess. And
Yeah.
I guess the sort of concerns that I feel I've come across when I've tried to talk about it within businesses, to get them interested. So I guess the thing for me really was when you said, well, give it a go, give it a try, then at least I could experience it firsthand, see what the benefits are. Because at one time I was literally sat here thinking, I have to learn how to do 3D design myself. I have to do some training. I have to learn how to do everything, because that's the only way I have complete control. And then you were like, no, you don't need to train yourself. You can, you, the creative, you have the ideas, and really it's about. I was sort of thinking about this when you mentioned about chatting to do the podcast. I think there is a big bit actually with a lot of young people coming into the industry these days. They don't have a lot of exposure, unless they're really fortunate. They don't have a lot of exposure and interaction working in 3D, as in draping on a stand or working with a pattern cutter directly.
Yes.
So
Yes.
translating their design into a 3D thing. So I think that's the thing for me that I see as almost the biggest benefit.
Yeah.
It really is a fantastic tool for in real, it's in the best you can get to real life, in almost draping on a stand, or seeing your design in its 2D form
Yes.
come to life in 3D,
Yes.
being able to rotate it, being able to see where you've put your seam lines, or
Yeah.
your drape or whatever. All of those things, to be able to sort of see it come to life before you actually push the button on having the pattern made.
Yes.
It's a massive game changer, and I really think investing in that end of the process, between being involved either with yourselves, or some factories now, are investing in this area.
Yeah.
But again, I think some businesses are still hesitant to work with the factories in that way. And maybe the factories are using it more on the production side of things,
Yeah.
or to go into production before they go into production. But I just think it's an amazing tool to bring your ideas to life. And, previously we've spoken about, it it shouldn't be like a barrier, because actually what it can do is actually bring all the elements together. You can get your tech teams on board really early on. They can see the garment, the prototype in 3D. They can check where they think they need, because of the being able to build your avatar as your in line with your brand guidelines, and
Yeah.
minimum measurements and everything. The garment techs and the QC teams can have can get involved quite early on to sort of
Yes.
flag things, and the software also indicates if there's stresses or within the pattern. So I really think it should be seen almost as a tool to align all the departments, rather than thinking it's taking a designer's creativity away or a tech's skill set away. It really should, I think, be seen as bringing all those elements together.
Yeah, and that's really interesting what you have just said, because that is one of the also the fear
Yeah,
or the concerns among certain
yeah,
brands or certain teams. And the fact that actually this is a tool to enhance the way these teams
yeah,
work together and make it more efficient is something that we need to
yeah,
highlight here, not really eliminating, but
yeah.
enhancing or improving the way all the
The whole
different
process.
teams and the whole process will work together. No, that's really really cool. And in terms of the the process, the workflow that we propose to you,
Yeah.
from the design sketch and the usability or the ease of use of the platform. Can you what's your take on that? Is it pretty easy to follow, and is it kind of
Yeah.
representative? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is quite intuitive. I found, as I said, I'm not fully trained in sort of Illustrator and all of the sort of Adobe Creative Suites and everything. I can do little bits and pieces, but I'm nowhere sort of skilled in any of those programs. But I actually found it quite intuitive. I found it quite easy to follow through. I think it's like anything, like any new sort of app or desktop system that you start using. There's always not necessarily teething problems, but even if I change the layout on my Outlook or something, I'm suddenly like, what's happened? It's so different. But you click another button and it all comes back to how you remember setting it all up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think it's the first few times you use it, there's a little bit of that going on because you're like, oh, what's this do? What's this do?
Yeah.
But it's pretty easy and quite simple to sort of follow through and pick up. And I would say if I can pick it up, most people can pick it up. Yeah, and it's just seemed quite logical,
Yeah.
the flow of it, from initial, sending you initial sketches, for you guys sort of then proposing initial avatars and then initial prototypes. And then actually, the bit that I found most useful, I guess, or most exciting was being able then to do all the adjustments, almost like a fit session, like a, tweaking that. So from what you've got from 2D to 3D, you're seeing it in real proportion. So you can suddenly go, no, that needs to be bigger, that needs to be longer, like all those little subtle things that you potentially might be doing in a first fit session.
Yeah.
You can actually do all of that on that prototype, which I found really quite exciting, being able to finesse that at that stage.
Yeah.
So, I found it quite easy to use, really, and I found the process quite easy to use.
And do you
It's
feel that?
just,
Sorry.
no, I said, I think the only thing was I wanted to do everything like that. It was like, right, okay, everything, like 250 lines. I want them all CAD'd, in 3D.
Yeah. And do you feel that you have to change the way you look into things? Like obviously, fitting during like a live fit session
Yeah.
versus fitting. I mean, was there a lot of adjustments, or did it come kind of almost naturally as you were going through the process?
It came really naturally, and I think that was the sort of a little bit of the light bulb moment for me, because it was that, oh, this is just like doing a fit session, in terms of, we were sort of amending necklines or, just really subtle things that you might do in a fit session. I might take a marker pen out and draw on the garment or cut something off, or so apart from, you say, in a fit session where you're actually making the garment fit the best it can. You know, all those really subtle sort of design changes that make you know, make the garment much more flattering, much, you know, just a much better garment. It was that sort of moment. I was like, oh, this is really quite you know, this is really quite exciting,
Yeah.
because you can do all those like little subtle tweaks you can do on your avatar,
Yeah.
so that by the time your proto comes in, you're doing less of that, or you
Yeah.
potentially not doing any of that. Obviously, you know, there will always be subtle things that change,
Yeah.
you know, from the pattern to the fabric, you know,
Yes.
that
Yes.
sort of bit. I think that bit's inevitable, but it just means that you're getting it right first time, or
Yeah.
close to first time,
Yeah.
much quicker, much quicker.
Yeah.
You know, and it can make a massive difference just sort of tweaking a neckline or a sleeve, or
Yes.
you know,
Exactly.
the proportion of a garment to make it look more flattering and make it, you know, a better garment really for the customer ultimately.
Yeah. And I remember, because after we finished the first main style that you wanted to develop, then you're like, oh, but I remember that you're like, I want to see in different colors and different iteration, different
Prints
types of,
and yeah,
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 and sleeves and all that, and we actually
yeah,
able to do very quickly
yeah,
different types of sleeves,
yeah.
and that,
Because you know that
yeah,
was brilliant, because
yeah,
again it's like you've got it in 3D, and you can do really subtle changes on it,
yeah,
and make it look like a completely different garment just by,
exactly,
you know, again, we were changing sleeves and necklines, I think, but
yeah,
and then obviously the color,
yeah,
and you know that was a really fun thing to do, but you know, relatively quick thing to do. So if you were in a situation where you were, you know, working with your buying and merchandising teams, or you know, you can just show them really quickly, and you've got half a range built sort of
exactly, and
quite speedily.
yeah, and we can. I think the great thing, and one of the main um, opportunity for brands as well, is we can determine like main blocks. Like main,
Yes,
and
yeah,
and see, as the season goes by, you can repeat the main blocks with different details and different hem length
exactly.
or
Yeah,
sleeves types or colors, and they
yeah.
can be done, and I can be simulated very quickly and with
Yeah.
very little
And
cost.
also it helps any brand with their to keep their fit consistent.
Yeah,
You know, so again, then that helps to the customer. They kind of know, if I buy this size, it's going to fit me like this, and you
exactly.
know, and it just, obviously there's always going to be subtle tweaks,
Yeah.
you know, depending on the style, depending on the fabrication ultimately.
Yes.
But what you're doing is you're almost sort of you're kind of removing a lot of the human error that can happen, you
Yes.
know, and almost, well, it is standardizing it, but it's just making it a little bit easier for everyone. They're not having to sense check back on all those bits, because it's just consistent, you
Yeah.
know, and you're starting from a really good starting point. And
Yeah.
then equally, you know, that same block going, you know, say that same sort of block and prototype going to two different supply bases in potentially two different countries, the likelihood of getting consistency across that improves as well. So
Exactly.
I think for me, it was a little, I felt, I got quite excited again, because it was a bit like, you know, when I sort of started my career, you know, and we did have a pattern room, and you know, we worked quite closely with the pattern room. Even when we would go on trips, we would take our suitcases filled with what we, you know, were tray softs, which were basically core blocks or core dress top patterns or
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
that we had, that we knew were like really good fit, consistently best selling pieces. We would take suitcases full of them with us on our trips to develop new product, and we'd hand those over to the factory, you know, do some new designs and, you know, new detailing or whatever, but you know, give that that block to the factory as the starting point, because we knew we'd have a much better chance of getting a
Yeah.
great fitting first sample.
Yeah.
And I know pattern cutting and everything now is all, obviously is all digital as well. But it just sort of made me laugh, because I thought, oh, it's just a version of that, really. You can develop, you can
Yeah.
develop your prototype, send it to different countries, and the consistency of what you get back is the chances of that being closer is so much increased.
Yeah, no, totally. That's really an important point, given that, the supply chain is so wide now, and most of the brands now do not actually, like you said, have a pattern room, or not even have a
Yeah,
CNT type of development, but fully
yeah,
factored, where they just send
yeah.
everything and the suppliers take care of everything. Now, that's really
Mhm.
interesting. And what about the challenges? What do you think about the challenges of, you know, this digital
I
product
think it,
development?
yeah, I think it's really funny, but I think one of the challenges still is visually, when the avatars, or when a brand doesn't like the look of the avatar, or the mannequin isn't.
On brand, or
Yeah, I know it sounds really stupid, and you're like, don't look at the shoes, don't look at the head, it's like you're just looking at the body. But people
you
do,
can,
and they're like,
yeah,
oh, and they get put off. Seriously, they get put off.
yeah,
And that's quite a funny thing, because you think people would see through that.
mm,
Um, but I think it really is just down to people getting used to a new way of working,
hmm,
and almost acknowledging it's going to be different, but the benefits will outweigh
yeah,
the benefits will. What's the opposite of benefits? The negatives. It
yeah,
they'll be slightly different, but it will sort of outweigh it in the end,
yeah.
because you can see things more realistically, and it will look closer to what your final prototype looks like.
No, that's great.
So yeah.
So it's worth
Um,
it then.
oh, absolutely. I've been, yes, absolutely. I think it's a fantastic tool, and I think it's a fantastic way for people to test digital development. Ultimately, it won't be for every brand, and it might not be for every department or every area of every brand, but
Yeah,
I think it's a fantastic way for teams to start working with the technology, to understand what benefits it has. And I do sort of think the more people use it, and the more we embrace it, then the more people will get on board. I just
yeah,
think we're at the very, very beginning of sort of going over the edge on a roller coaster, and then we'll be off, kind of thing.
mm,
Um, because it is such a fantastic tool.
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And this has
No,
been,
thank you.
a great conversation. And I'm really glad that, you spilled out all the experiences that you had,
Yeah,
trying with us. Any parting words for, any
give it a
brands?
go. What is there to lose? You can, you
Yes.
can, you can, for anybody that's sort of digitally curious, I guess,
Hmm.
for anybody that thinks, oh, it's not for me, or it's too difficult to integrate it into my current, work process, just give it a go. I think that's the thing for me. I was curious, but I gave it a go. And then once you've kind of gone through it yourself, you can see where the benefits are. You can see where businesses can most benefit from it, and where it could fit in your, design development process. So yeah, give it a go.
Perfect. And any advice for me?
Oh, Bonnie. I think you've just got to keep going. It's a fantastic idea and concept, and I do really, really believe that everyone's going to be on board with it, and you will be at the front of it. So Just keep
Oh,
going and keep the faith.
great. Thank you so much, Anne, for this session. Okay, so have a good day, and I'm gonna
And you.
turn off the recording now.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anne.